Good morning. Welcome to this Tech Academy session on real-time CDP connections. And the topic of today is event forwarding. My name is Wouter van Geluwe. I'm the Chief Technologist at Adobe in Western Europe. I'm really focused on all things technology, architecture, integration, and so on. And the topic of today is quite close to me. So everything related to event forwarding, server-side activities, and so on. And as you may know, in past sessions, we have talked about other topics like Edge, API, and server-to-server integrations on other topics and at other parts of the Adobe ecosystem. So today is going to be focused on the forwarding of those events. But as you also may know, this is part of a series of events. And the next Tech Academy is currently scheduled for April 25, and it will talk about the Adobe Experience Platform and commerce integration. So if you're interested in that, please sign up for that through the Tech Academy pages anyway. And it's also good to know that all of these sessions are recorded. So we've got a YouTube channel, Experience Makers Community International. I'll put the message in the link in the chat so you can find it easily, or you can scan the QR code next to me. And all the sessions, all past sessions are available there as well for you to view. Now, the topic of today, as I said, is event forwarding. So before we go in the hands-on demonstration and walk through all the aspects of how this works, what kind of data is available for forwarding, I just wanted to highlight the business side of things a bit first. So obviously, the move to server-side inspired by many industry evolutions. One of them being the deprecation of third-party cookies. You know, many of you probably are measuring the return on ad spend and as such your investments in channels like Facebook and Google and Snapchat and TikTok, etc. Based on conversions. You want to see how many people convert after having seen advertisements. And by removing the third-party cookies, it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that properly. So yeah, finding your, connecting your ecosystem and connecting your conversions into those ecosystems is quite crucial. And this has really inspired the server-side evolution. But also on top of that, it's more than that. It's not just into advertising ecosystems, but also many organizations have this concept of a big brain and the brain for communication and orchestration, whereby the marketing solutions are typically the brain for communication and orchestration. You still need to have access to all of your data server-side environment. So when a customer has clicked on a product page, that data is relevant for Facebook and Google advertising and so on. It's relevant for email marketing, but it's also relevant to be stored as part of a real-time customer profile in your own data lake. So the need for sending this data server-side into not just advertising, but also your own data lake environments is crucial. So event forwarding is making that possible as a whole. So there are plenty of out-of-the-box integrations that we have made available for you. We'll talk about a couple of those today, and you'll see a hands-on implementation of the Facebook conversion API and also an integration into AWS Kinesis. But it's much more than that. So I'll show you the catalog of currently available extensions, but also things like Azure are available. We even have integrations to Pega as an example, where we can share event data to Pega in a server-side way. And all of these things will be discussed in today's session very much in depth. I already spoke about connecting the marketing ecosystem to your data lake and to your big brain of your organization, but also transforming data. As you know, data is collected by Adobe in a specific data model, the experience data model, XDM. And well, your own data lake environment doesn't use XDM, it has its own data model. So from that event forwarding capability, we also have the ability to process and transform that data to basically share it to you in a more bespoke way. So it's really an easier way to integrate those two ecosystems with each other. I mentioned AWS already. Snowflake is becoming increasingly popular as well. Integrations with the machine learning use cases in the back of your mind, crucial. And machine learning models also need to have event data available. So again, forwarding that event data from the Adobe ecosystem into different environments makes a lot of sense. And we can see a big growth in the number of use cases that are supported because of this. In the end, the benefits of event forwarding is the fact that it gives you a very easy way to take your clickstream data, share it quickly in real time with any other endpoints downstream. It's highly reliable, so there's no downtime. The SLAs are 99.99%, so the data is shared consistently in an easy way. It's customizable, so as I was mentioning before, you can transform that data. I'll show you this in the next part. It's a single way to take data from the Adobe ecosystem into your ecosystem, and because it is integrated into the whole Adobe ecosystem, the consent is available as well. So people who don't consent to their data being used for specific type of use cases, you'll be able to use that consent and enforce it well downstream. So all in all, this is the business side of things, but let's go a bit more into the weeds. So before I touch the solution itself, I wanted to highlight the architecture a little bit, and you can see behind me the typical whiteboards of the Adobe Experience Platform architecture. It hasn't got much on it. We'll build this out as we go along. But I wanted to specify what's real-time CDP connections. First of all, it has the acronym RTCDP in its name, real-time CDP. However, this is not a CDP solution yet. This is the entry point to a CDP. And why do we refer to it as an entry point? That's simply because by implementing the data collection needed to use event forwarding, you're basically implementing something once that can be reused for event forwarding, but also for many other use cases downstream. So many of you will be familiar with Launch, which has now changed its name into tags. So that's really the client-side tag management that is required to be implemented. So client-side, we need to have a presence of a script that collects data. So over here on the website, you'll need to implement something. In my demonstration, I will be using tags, formerly known as Launch. But obviously, if you use any other tag manager like Telium, IQ, Google Tag Manager, or anything else, you'll be able to achieve the same thing, just that the implementation methods of the client-side library will be different. So with the client-side setup done, you'll be able to collect key value pairs and stream them into the edge. So from here, whenever a customer clicks on that website, you'll send that data into Adobe's edge. And this is where the next concept that you'll see also in the hands-on demo comes to mind, the concept of data stream. So a data stream is basically this endpoint that is opened up and which has the ability to receive data. So the customer clicks on the website, that data is sent into the edge, it's collected at the edge, and then the data stream that is defined will basically decide what happens with that data. You'll see this in the hands-on demo as well, but obviously you can send that data into the Adobe Experience Platform ecosystem. But today we won't be focusing on that stream. We've talked about that in many other Tech Academy sessions past. So what we will be focusing on today, really the connection from that edge into either external third-party ecosystems like Facebook, like AWS and many others, but also the connectivity between the edge and then your own enterprise ecosystem, whereby you might have your own data infrastructure, which is running on various pieces of technology. This might be AWS, might be Oracle, this might be a Kafka pipeline, etc. But this is your data environment, which we have the ability to stream data towards in real time. So to make that possible, to basically enable that forwarding of data into advertising or into your data lake environments, we now have the ability to define an event forwarding property at the edge. And that's where the definition of what happens at the edge will happen. And this is a friendly user interface which you'll be able to use to basically listen to incoming data and then define rules. And those rules will then decide which type of data will be sent to a different environment. So in today's presentation, we'll talk about the client-side library. We'll talk about the data stream setup. We'll talk about the edge property that needs to be created and configured. And we'll talk about how data surfaces in those environments and how that integration basically set up. It's important to know that real-time CDP Connections, as I was saying before, isn't a full-blown license of the real-time CDP capability. So when you start using only the real-time CDP Connections capability, which enables the event forwarding, you basically will define a data set and a schema which will live in the data lake of Adobe Experience Platform, but you won't be able to use the other capabilities of the platform with just that real-time CDP Connections license. However, if you do have a full license for real-time CDP, then you'll have the ability to use the real-time customer profile and its capabilities to send segments to destinations and so on. On top of that, you'll be able to use the event forwarding as well. So just for clarity, if I take the same diagram, but then in a more complete way, just open this up. This is the full Adobe Experience Platform architecture from a high-level perspective. We talked about the website, client-side presence, the edge, and the ability to forward data to other destinations. But obviously, Adobe Experience Platform has much more capability than that. When you have a license for everything that's in here, then you also will be able to use the event forwarding part of the connections capability. Now, let's make things a bit more concrete and a bit more hands-on. So let me change my screen. Here we go. So you're seeing Adobe Experience Platform data collection now. The data collection environment hopefully should be known to you already. So on the left side, you've got the ability to look at your formerly launch properties, now tags properties. So in here, you'll find a launch property for the bootcamp. This is the website I'll be using next in this demonstration. So the website is running over here in the browser. And every time that I click on this website, an event is sent by the website into the edge. So if I just go to this real-time CDP product page and I'm using the filter interact, you'll then see this interact call being sent. This is because we are using this launch property and because we have set up the extension for the Adobe Experience Platform Web SDK, and that we have the ability to send data to that edge infrastructure. And if you have a look into that setup, you will see that in here we are referring to the data stream. So you saw me write down the data stream a second ago on the whiteboard. So with the data stream defined over here, we basically decide what happens when an interact call is sent by the website to the edge. Then we can decide how to use that payload for other purposes. But if you have a look at that payload, and if we visualize this, this is a typical XDM payload. which looks like this. So you've got the event object over here, and in there you've got the XDM object, and then you've got all of your key value pairs that are defined as part of your launch or tags setup. So that's really what happens in this launch property, which is the client-side library. We defined rules for page views. We have defined the extension to send data into this specific data stream. But now we want to also use that data for different purposes. We want to stream that data server-side to somewhere else. And to do that, we need to go into data streams. So these data streams are defined at a sandbox level. So in here, this is the one that's currently in use. So this is the data stream. This is the little dot on the edge that I was drawing a couple of minutes ago. So whenever an event is entering that edge, we have now decided that something needs to happen with Adobe Experience Platform. Something needs to be shared with Adobe Target. And then also we've got an event forwarding setup that we have done over here. If I have a look into that event forwarding setup, you will then see that in here we are linking to this edge property. So to take a quick step back, you have a client-side tags property which is running a library on the website itself. This is an edge property which is running at the edge, so that when data is collected at the edge, we do something with it. So this property is defined as part of the event forwarding capability in data collection. So if I have a look for this property over here, you'll quickly see that it looks quite similar to a client-side property with the ability to define rules, with the ability to define data elements, and with the ability to define extensions. So in my setup, I've configured a couple of extensions. So let me start with the first one. That's the Adobe Cloud Connector, which basically makes it possible to stream any incoming data using a fetch command to any other third-party endpoint. So one way to visualize this is by using a custom webhook to show you what really happens. So you can see this webhook.site. It's a free website which allows you to test incoming data. You can now see that I went to the real-time CDP product page on the website, just behind me. But if I then go back to the website over here, click on this Adobe Journey Optimizer website, you will then see that on the webhook.site environment, we have got a new incoming request, which is the page view for the Adobe Journey Optimizer product page. So you can see that by clicking on the website, immediately this event is forwarded into my webhook. And that is because I've defined a rule that triggers on every page page visits. And then based on that rule, which triggers always, I'm defining an action. So the action is really what do we do with the data? How do we use it downstream? And in this case, I've set up this Cloud Connector extension to make a fetch call, which is then basically sending it into this custom webhook.site. So this is just a way to show what it is, how data streams from one environment to the other, how fast it is. But obviously, we can do much more with it, which is what we'll do next. But before we go into the next kind of destination setup, it's just important to know that you can also define or change the payload being sent into that specific endpoint. In this case, I'm referring to an XDM event data element. That data element is basically defined over here. So when I look at XDM event, you can see me refer to this path of arc.event.xdm. So this is something that you should know. The incoming payload from this website, which looks like this, this payload over here, refers to this events.xdm. So we can send multiple events. In this case, every event is deduped, and we are referring to the ARC, the Adobe resource context. .incoming event .xdm to basically filter out everything that starts over here. All of this information is shared and streamed to the webhook.site endpoint thanks to the setup of this specific data element. Now, that means that you can go deeper into that hierarchical JSON structure. So in this case, it's just the event. But if I have a look at, for instance, this page name data element, you can drill down into arc.event.xdm.web.webpagedetails.name. And this is really the XDM data model that you can access and parse on the fly in real time. You then decide how data is shared to that specific endpoint. So if I go back to my rule setup, and when I have a look at my cloud connector again, you've got the ability to use this raw body, which is referring to the XDM event data element. You can also define a JSON that contains a custom key value pair combination. So I can basically define a custom key value setup and refer to my specific page name, to my specific page URL. As such, I can change the payload that I'm using in a very custom way. So with this, you can change things as you see fit. And that would also make the integration into the downstream system potentially a lot easier by having the ability to change this payload in a custom and user-friendly way. You also have the ability to add these data elements as query string parameters. So very similarly, you could attach these so that they appear over here as key equals value. And depending on which downstream system you might use, this could be a potential good solution for you. Now, with the Adobe Cloud Connector, you basically have the ability to send to any endpoint. So there's not really any limitation anymore. Any downstream endpoint can be used. And obviously, when you do that, you also need to have the ability to potentially authenticate to those endpoints. So we have a couple of customers who are using this already with pure endpoints, whereby they are defining secrets. So if I have a look at this secrets capability, you have the ability to dynamically authenticate to a downstream system as well. And the ability here is to use OAuth, simple HTTP, strict tokens or Google OAuth. So this means that we can define a setup whereby a access token is generated dynamically. Then that access token can also refresh every couple of hours so that you can respect your organization's security policies in defining these secrets and in speaking to those downstream endpoints. In this example, I'm using that for Facebook. So in a couple of minutes, I'll show you how this is set up with Facebook. But it's important to know that with the Adobe Cloud Connector and the ability to define that as an action in every rule, that you can, well, send data anywhere, wherever you want, whichever way you want. This rule is quite simple and uses the all pages concept, but obviously you can define conditions as well. So you could define a condition based on the event type, so that when an add to cart happens or a purchase happens, specific other rules are triggered to then share all data to different systems depending on what you want to achieve. In the end, it's a very lightweight solution to implement. With launch available on the website already, with the JavaScript library and the key value pairs defined and against the XDM data model, you're already sending that data into the Adobe ecosystem. So defining the event forwarding property and using the Cloud Connector as a whole is something that takes a couple of hours to set up. It's not something that takes months and months and months to define. And we have seen customers implement this on the first day of having purchased the license to use it and being live after 4 hours, after 6 hours, sending data into their own ecosystem. One of our customers is using this to stream data onto their Kafka pipeline. but before having the ability to speak to that Kafka pipeline, they want us to authenticate against an Oracle managed endpoint. So we are doing that using the secrets capability, generating a dynamic OAuth token every 8 hours. Then that gives us the ability to stream data into their Kafka pipeline directly, as an example. Now, in the introduction, I was talking a lot about advertising ecosystems. So streaming those conversions into, as an example, Facebook is a very common use case for this capability. And to define that, well, we need to use the Meta Conversions API extension. And the setup here is, again, quite limited. So to use the Conversions API for Facebook, you need to have a pixel ID set up. You need to have an access token defined. And those access tokens can be stored into a data element in Launch well, thanks to the crypto feature. So if I have a look at my secrets, what I was showing to you before, I'm looking over here, you can see Facebook Conversion API dev token, then the type is set to token, and the token itself is hidden. You can't see it, but it is implemented, and the connection has succeeded, which means that every time that this rule is triggered, we are basically sending the event to Facebook. So that's also subject to the rule setup. When I go back to my all pages rule, you can see this Meta Conversions API extension action. And in here, you can see the parameters needed by Facebook to basically manage that incoming conversion, that incoming event. So these are defined together with the Facebook development team. So you can see the action source, you can see the event name of page view. You need to define a Unix timestamp as well. And then things like page URL are required. But you can go much deeper, much further than just this. So every transaction, every event can have its own identifier, can then be consolidated on the Facebook side as well. And you can provide as many additional parameters as you wish. Things like email or phone can be shared as well, and they will be hashed when doing so and using them. And then all of these fields are basically predefined parts of the integration between Adobe and what the Conversions API of Facebook needs. And on top of that, you can provide custom data fields as well. So that's something that you can manage yourself. To basically implement and test all of this, you need to have a Facebook account, a Facebook Business Manager account. And in there, you can define data sources. So you can see that I've defined this data source over here. This is basically that specific pixel that has been defined. You can see in the settings the pixel ID. So this is the one that you could see in the extension setup over here. This is where you make the connection between Facebook and Adobe. And then when you scroll down, as you remember, you need to have this access token. So you can generate the access token over here, which will then also need to be stored into that secret into your edge event forwarding property at the edge. And with those two variables defined, you have the ability to start sending data from the Adobe edge into Facebook. And I've set up this test event. So whenever I click on the website, you will see that there's an incoming event that will be shared to Facebook as well in real time. Let me just refresh. Anyway, you can see all of these incoming events, the real-time CDP product page, then also the other values that have been provided as part of the integration. The user agent is a required one, and Facebook also requires additional customer information on that event, properly connect the conversions to the advertising ecosystem. But with this, you can see the incoming data quite easily into the Facebook ecosystem. So this is just one way. A similar approach exists for other advertising ecosystems. So it's an easy way to connect your incoming data on your own properties, a secure server-side way to advertising environments. There's plenty of documentation available on how to set up all of this. So what I'll do after the session ends, in the post-event email, you'll find all of that data as well, so that you can easily set up all of this yourself in case. On top of that, I also wanted to focus on other use cases. So sending event data into your own ecosystem is also a crucial one. And AWS, since a couple of months, has got a predefined connector in the catalog. So before having the AWS extension, we already had the ability to send a fetch request into an API gateway endpoint of AWS, and from there, things like Kinesis or S3 storage and so on. But now we can do that in a more programmatic way, more predefined way. So when you configure the extension in the Edge property, you need to provide your IAM user credentials, your access key ID, and your secret access key, which both come from AWS directly. And then once that has happened, you can basically connect to your Kinesis data streams. So what you'll see here is that I've got this data stream set up, and when I switch to my rule setup, my Edge property, you will also find this AWS send to Kinesis data stream action, which quite simply defines the stream to use, then the AWS region in which you have deployed your setup, and you need to provide your partition key as well. So those three are the required parameters before the integration can properly function. And with those set up, you then have the ability to see your event data incoming into your AWS environment. So in this case, just change the view so you can see a couple of incoming events. And then from a data viewer perspective, not sure if this will show everything. There we go. So you can see all of these incoming events as well. So every time that a page was loaded, the page was viewed, every event that happens on my specific website is now streamed into my AWS ecosystem as well. You can see the full XDM payload just like you could see it before, but now this happens in real time. So a customer clicks, event hits our edge, and within a couple of milliseconds, that same event will be shared to into your downstream endpoints. So it's again a lightweight way to integrate two environments to each other and to store your customer event data potentially for eternity, as long as you wish, and as long as the customer has consented you can then store it and use it for use cases like machine learning and many more into your own big data ecosystem. Let me just check. I can see a couple of questions. Checking the chats. Okay. So I see a question from Stefan. The secret option, does it come available if you set up event forwarding enabled on data collection? The secrets option is a standard capability that's available when you use event forwarding properties. So there's nothing to happen. It's just available out of the box. I can see a question from William. So I see no events in the rules of event forwarding. Does that mean that every call to the data stream triggers every rule in event forwarding? So in my case, in my setup, yes. So every event will automatically trigger this specific rule. But obviously, when you define when you define a filter or a condition over here, then you have got the ability to selectively fire the rule, and depending on what you need to use. I can see a question from William again on can I use this event forwarding as a sort of proxy to change the data and or enrich the data and then send it back to another data stream? Theoretically, yes. So you can send any kind of fetch request to any kind of endpoint, so that would also apply. You'd be able to fire it back to the Adobe ecosystem again. I'm not sure if it's best practice, to be honest. I guess it depends on the use case. To generate additional loads, and the real-time CDP Connections capability also has is subject to scoping. So when you acquire the license, you've got a set amount of incoming and outgoing requests that are available as per the license. So the more activity you would have, scoping would have to be impacted by that as well. Theoretically, it would work, but depending on what you're trying to achieve, there might be better ways to get there as well. And then I see one more question from William. Does the Facebook Conversions API connector require the Facebook pixel to still be fired on client side like server side GTM? From the Adobe perspective, I would say I don't think so. The Google extension, the Google Ads extension for event forwarding still requires the server side, the client side GTag library to do something, but for Facebook, I don't believe that's required. And then another question is on the cookies. So how are cookies handled on event forwarding? So cookies are not available in this context. The identifier comes from the XDM identity map. When you send data, you have the ability to use the identifiers that are in here. The ECID technically is a cookie-based identity, so you could share that downstream. But any other identity would have to be collected client-side, be put into this identity map concept. From there, it would be accessible for server-side forwarding as well. So the technical handling of cookies doesn't really happen by Adobe in this case, but you can handle that client-side, input the cookie in the identity map to achieve the same kind of integration to a third-party vendor. It's also worth noting, this was part of one of the previous Tech Academy sessions, that Adobe also has a first-party ID setup, which also allows you to use your own kind of first-party identity in dealing with incoming customer data, which has a different impact when it comes to cookie retention periods and so on. I can only suggest you watch that specific Tech Academy session on the YouTube channel as well, as it may hold lots of valuable information for you properly handling identity in the currently sometimes difficult ecosystem of Apple and ITP and so on. Then I can see one more incoming question, event chat by Ola. Is there a way to get the data back from Facebook? So Facebook technically, as you probably know, Facebook is a walled garden. Facebook doesn't allow any data to be shared outside of Facebook ecosystem, except for clicks. So when somebody clicks on advertisements, that specific click would technically become available to you to collect and store it on your customer profile. But any other data would be stuck into the Facebook ecosystem. Let me check if there are any other questions. I don't see any other questions. So I've more or less come to the end of what I wanted to show you in today's session. So with the extensions on the Edge property, you have the ability to stream data anywhere. So just for clarity and complete, to be complete, These are all the available extensions today. So you can see AWS, Microsoft, Facebook, MailChimp, and a couple more. We have got a very active pipeline of development of these extensions. So you can expect approximately 15 to 20 new extensions to be released in the next 6 to 12 months. Yet more and more brands are embracing this approach. It is extremely lightweight. It doesn't really require much development time. And it actually saves much of your own development time, because if you would have to build these integrations yourself in your own ecosystem, from there connect to each of these individually using your own custom code, I think you would quickly spend a couple of weeks in the developing these integrations yourself with connections and event forwarding. They're available out of the box, and they allow you to take the same clickstream data in the same way, then send it in a very lightweight way to any other downstream. So I think with that, we can slowly close the session. I wanted to still highlight the YouTube channel once again. Sorry, I keep doing that every time, because there's so much content on there, not just on event forwarding or server-side activities. If you're interested in the full architecture description, so you could see me use that whiteboards in the beginning of the session. You can find the full whiteboard with the full explanation over here as well. But also other topics like encryption keys and the ability to use them in a customer-managed way. You can hear from our own customers in these sessions, whereby basically do a Q&A and hear how they are using the tools, the Adobe solutions, to provide value in our organization. Then over here in the Tech Academy playlist, you will find all of the past sessions. We had one session in January whereby we had a customer presenter from DNB who basically spoke about how they are building a custom application for their call center and other in-house environments to basically consume and use profile data from the platform in a better way internally, to connect, to become truly omnichannel and connect online, offline, so on. Many of these sessions provide lots of insights. So once again, I can only advise you to have a look. And you can also find much content here translated into different languages. So if you're French speaking or Spanish or German, you can find the content over here in your own language as well. So let me check for last time if there are any new questions. No, I don't see any new incoming questions. Then with that, I would like to thank you for your time today, for dialing in. And I hope to see you again in a couple of weeks when you talk about the Adobe Experience Platform plus commerce integration. Thanks a lot and have a great day.